After my previous video, some people asked me how viable Ashe, Varus, and Jhin are in solo queue. So I've decided to do this one to give you 7 tips that will help you get a better understanding of these champions and how you can use them to get LP better, as well as if you're looking to pick this up as a amateur or pro M player, or maybe even as a professional player looking at this video, it might help you add these champions to your champion pool as well. So let's get started with tip number 1. Know what a champion is supposed to do, know your role. Let's get one thing straight. Varus, Ashe, and Jhin can put up huge numbers in the end game, and this is a misconception that I have, or it's true. They do tons of damage if you let them freely auto attack, but don't think of them as scaling champions. Their lack of escape spells means that the likes of Tristana, Caitlyn, Kai'Sa, and Ezreal will be able to be more effective as an AD carry in the later stages of the game. What you want to be doing with these champions as much as possible is accelerating the pace of the game by crushing your lane and generating a huge tempo lead through which you and your team use to snowball the game. This will be a much different approach as compared to how people usually think of AD carries who want to get core items. I get my 2 crit items and then pick up lots of farm in the side lanes, and then you become this or what they call the Teddy Fountain Laser. That's the way Jhin does it. Tip number 2, you want to communicate the setup with your team. So you need to communicate what your champion needs with the team. And I think that this applies to almost every champion in general. But if you're going to be playing something that is away from the usual norm, you want to bully the lane and you want your jungler and support to be able to assist you with that. Dual queuing with a support or jungler will help you achieve this much more efficiently. And you want your support to be able to counterpick the lane matchup as much as possible, with champions like Zyra, Karma, and Morgana being very strong mages paired with these 3 AD carries. Or if you see a kill lane being drafted for your opponent's bot lane, then something like Alyssa, Tristana, or Thresh and Lucian, going for the Tahm Kench or Shen where appropriate might be a wise choice as well. If you have a range mage or if you have a range or mage support, you naturally will have to winning 2v2 in the bot lane if you execute the traits properly. And what you need from your jungler is to track the opponent jungler down and prevent him from giving assistance to his bot lane. Get your support to push in with you and hit the turret whenever possible. I prefer to have my support blind pick Karma, Zyra, or Morgana when I play these champions, as it takes significant coordination from your opponents to be able to breach such a poke setup. Now, the key word here is that your jungler has to enforce the matchup. You're not asking your jungler to necessarily die for you, which is a mistake that some people make. Some teams that I coached previously, when they play a double mage or double poke support bot lane, the jungler comes and says, "Yeah, they're half health. Can we go for the dive?" And they end up giving a kill over because they have not blown the opponent's summoner spells yet. The converse is true, is that when you have a tank type support, your ability to whittle down the turret is not as much. So what you want now is your jungler to coordinate a dive with you, and then you have a support which will be able to suck up more damage and provide more CC to guarantee the kill under the turret. So you guarantee the kill, and then you take the turret after that. So the idea here is to poke them out slowly and then whittle away at the turret. And once your opponents fall below a certain threshold, you can call for the dive. Usually it's about 50%. Most ideally, or if you really want to be extremely safe and you're not that confident, and especially if you are not dual queuing with a support or jungler in this case, it's only you might even want to wait for it to be 30%, or you know that this guy is staying around when he should not be staying, doesn't have some of the spells, and you always want to do this most ideally before a cannon wave so that you can capitalize on the damage to the turret while your opponents are dead. Tip number 3, always cheese the level 1 whenever possible. Ashe, Varus, and Jhin have the cheesiest early level pressure, and you want to enable that as soon as possible. Poke champs, even if you're playing champions like Ziggs or champions that will benefit from having a poke bot lane, you're playing a mage support as well. This applies to those setups as well. You want to enable the poke as soon as possible, and when you have a pushing lane, it makes it so much easier to play against. And if you enable that pushing lane from level 1, it can be extremely obnoxious to play against. So you want to communicate this to your team. And why is this so important? Is because people always default to having the bot lane help the jungler in solo queue. But something as simple as asking your jungler to start on the top side of the map will allow you and your support to start shoving the wave even before they meet at the halfway mark. So you walk into the front of the brush, you wait for the minion wave to walk past the turret range, and you start auto attacking it straight away. and this guarantees you the shoving lane and will allow you to easily find angles to poke your opponent with. And that's a bonus to this as well. Having your jungler start on the top side of the map means that he will path towards the bottom side of the map. And this gives you the cover that you want to enforce the poke matchup. Now, do keep in mind that since the 8.9 patch, the Scuttle Crab timing has changed, and you want to exercise caution, especially when you execute this level 1 cheese on the raid side, because your opponent's jungler will see a pushed wave in the bottom lane, and he has raid buff now, and he can path bot lane directly after his raid buff with his bot lane, and go for level 2 gank. And if you blow your summoners, and your opponent has a summoner spell advantage over you, you will find it very difficult to continue poking out against them. So if you are on raid side, you need to look at the opponent jungler and realize and ask yourselves, is this a champion that is effective at ganking level 2 with a raid buff? If the answer is no, feel free to continue to use this tactic to apply pressure on your opponents from the get-go. Tip number 4, trading in lane. Know your trading patterns. While the trading patterns will paired with a mage support will take some time getting used to, here's the broad strokes of it. You want to focus fire on with your support on the same target as much as possible. So don't give your opponents a free pass. You see that the AD has drained all his health potions, continue to focus down the AD carry. If it's a support who has no longer any access to sustain, continue to throw your spells at the support. You want to break your opponent's formation, and you want to use your spells to pull your opponents as much as possible as opposed to using it to CS. For Varus, this is the simplest to do because his spells bypass the minion wave. But for Ashe and Jhin, it will take some getting used to, especially for Jhin, whittling down the backline first and then bouncing the bouncing grenade off the 3 range minions in order to get the 4th proc on your opponents. Know the ranges as well. While Ashe and Varus have got long range abilities, Ashe has a natural auto attack range advantage, so applying the trading stance where appropriate, especially with Jhin as well, can be very useful to continue to get favorable trades in your favor. It is also important to know your all-ins when playing these champions, so that you know when you can easily get a kill after chunking your opponents down near the turret. While Ashe has the best poke, she has the weakest all-in. She only has one effective damage spell, the Q is a steroid of sorts, and the W effectively does a empowered auto attack worth of damage. If you look at the wiki page, the base damage for the W is actually very low. It just does plus 100% of your AD, of your attack damage. And Jhin is actually the best at going for an all-in combo when paired with an engaged support. Now, to put things into perspective, this is without taking the sorcery tree runes. Jhin and Alistar, they deal 650 damage after damage reduction at level 5 with a combo. This is about reliable damage. You get about 1 auto attack in. And if you cook the 4th shot auto attack, this actually goes up to slightly over 700 damage. And this is if you have a BF sword and you go for such a play. And if you do not have a BF sword, so if you have not based yet, it's only 520 damage with just the Doran sword. Tip number 5. Go to the mid lane in the mid game. Now, this is the big mistake that I see people not familiar with these champions make because you're so used to playing regular AD carries that either want to extend the laning phase and continue to farm in the side lanes, but this is not what these champions want to do. So people, they usually take the first turn and they spend too much time in the side lanes, and they're not able to transition effectively into the next phase of the game where they can overrun their opponents with this massive crowd control threat from these 3 champions. Now, your ultimate is a very strong crowd control tool, and that can create picks and false objectives. We always talk about objective gaming being the most important thing, and here's a simpler way to do it. Instead of saying, going through all sorts of complicated things which needs you to communicate with your team or whatsoever, just walk into the mid lane. If your mid laner is still there, it doesn't matter, because if your mid laner is still there, now you have the manpower advantage, and just shoot the ultimate, get the kill, and then take the objective. And putting you in the mid lane as well, we have put a very strong crowd control tool in excess of the entirety of the map. If you're at the top lane and there's something happening on the bottom side of the map, there's an objective to be taken on the bottom side of the map, you cannot assess that. But if you're in the mid lane as an Ashe, as a Varus, as a Jhin, it is very easy for you to push into the wave, and your opponent usually has to respect that because they are deathly afraid of your ultimate, and you will be able to translate the pressure over to a side lane. Now, the next question here that I get is, how do I use the Ashe, the Varus, and the Jhin ultimates? This is a criticism that new players who are picking up these champions, especially players who are very used to the more standard kind of marksman, are not too used to. It's how do you use the ultimate? How do you shoot the Ashe arrow? When do you use the Chains of Corruption from the Varus, and when do you um, open up the shooting gallery for the Jhin? So this is the hardest part about the Champions Kit that I think even pro players struggle to grasp it when I watch competitive level play. But there are two key ideas here. The first is that you want to use it to create a pick when you have the manpower advantage. So you don't want to shoot it into a 5v5 scenario. Um, other than, or at least this is just, we talk about using this as an engaged tool first, right? You want to shoot it only when you have a manpower advantage, and the second being the timing at which you want to use it. Now, the simplest way to think about it is that when you have the manpower advantage, is that you will be able to step up and pressure your opponent's turret because they won't step up and contest you to kill the wave. If they do, so just go kill them. But if they don't, they'll let the wave push in and they feel pressured because now they either lose out on CS and they let you hit the turret, or they have to step up and take a risk to clear it. If your opponent is just moving left and right, the creep wave has not hit the turret yet, this is when I see people use the ultimate wrongly and they shoot it prematurely. What you want to do is wait for your opponents to step up to clear the wave, and the moment they raise their arm or whatsoever, you watch the correct model and they begin the animation to cast a spell. It's very similar to landing skill shots as a support in bot lane. The moment they start the animation to cast a spell or to auto attack or to wave clear, you throw the ultimate out and it actually flies pretty fast, and you will score a kill and you will get the objective. For Varus and Jhin, their ultimates also have different usages. So for Jhin in this case is you want to get your ally to do damage first and then follow that up with W as the engage tool. But for Jhin and Varus, their ultimates can be used in other scenarios as well. For Varus, his ultimate can be used as a disengage tool or on top of it as an engage tool as well because the chains of corruption tends to kind of spread. Whereas for Jhin, the ultimate can be used as a re-engage tool where for in the case of Jhin, you want to use it when your opponents are trying to run away from you because it makes it very difficult because they have to try to dodge all the damage that's coming through. You hit them with one, it slows them down, and as they try to dodge, it also makes them run away slower from the rest of your team. The last tip is that you want to stay safe and strafe in team fights. Now, this trio of champions don't have the teamfight reset or teamfight escape that other champions enjoy, not the mobility that they already have. I think Jhin comes the closest with the Whisper, giving him bonus movement speed whenever he gets a crit off. And while you see the likes of LCK AD carries being able to strafe perfectly at the maximum auto attack range, this actually is very difficult to do because you don't have any escape. You misclick one time, they click on the wrong target, you move a little bit too far forward, you get a crowd control on you, and you die really easily. But for the purpose of lower level play and to put the training wheels on, and I think that if your team has enough damage, usually you want to drop enough damage to go alongside with these champions, you can actually use this mentality as well in competitive play. So to put the training wheels on, put the priority on keeping yourself safe instead of trying to maximize damage. Throw out your spells and fight your opponents outside of auto attack range even if you need to, and stay well out of reach of their gap closing abilities. You want to identify their key engagers on the opponent's team, and only after they have committed to another member of your team should you then move in to auto attack and do your full DPS. So that wraps it up. I hope that this has been useful in helping you pick up these three champions.